Today, I wanted to explore the themes and character writing of the South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. Firstly, I should mention that in addition to it being an R-rated film, this movie is also a musical. Trey Parker was very into theater and thought it would be funny to make a movie in a musical, despite musicals not being well received around the time. They were kind of known to actually be a box office killer, which was the opposite that the company wanted. The musical numbers do a lot for this movie. They make up most, if not all, of the main plot driving points, and I will be mentioning a few of them throughout this film. There will be some I cut out, either just because they're too obscene and they're just not really the focus of this, or brevity's sake, really, or just because I said, because I wanna. Without further ado, let us explore South Park. Bigger, longer, and Uncut. The main themes of the movie are accountability, or rather the lack thereof, hypocrisy, and negligence. The themes in the movie are heavily pointed at negligent parents and critics, while the hypocrisy is mainly focused towards the MPAA and one specific character. The movie opens up with a very innocent and childlike musical number, introducing the characters and setting up the beginning of the story. We meet Stan, who asks his mom for some money. Without asking many questions, she gives him the money and Stan goes to meet and gather all of his other friends. During this time, we also meet Kyle, and we also meet Kyle's brother, Ike, and then Sheila, the main plot protagonist, whereas his mother is the main antagonist of this film, worrying for what it would do to the boys. This begins to set up for one of the main themes, which is the lack of accountability. Sheila, while preaching about how evil the world is, allows them to go out to the town unsupervised, keeping in mind that the boys are 4th graders and Kyle is currently responsible for his younger brother. There's actually a really strong line at the end of this number when the boys arrive at the movies. It reads off to the movies we will go, where we learn everything that we know, because the movies teach us what our parents don't have time to say. Which, that was 1999? I really wish things would change, man. I really would. This also kind of implies that the parents aren't very regulative when it comes to things that they're watching or the media that they're consuming. So they learn a lot of things and have the same maturity level as the things that they see on TV. All of this happens within just the first 4 minutes of the movie, and not a single curse word has yet been dropped. So keep that in mind. This is still a rated R movie. So then we go to the scene where the boys go into the theater and see Asses of Fire, the Terrence and Phillip. The movie itself is your intro to the R rating, so to speak, and the Terrence and Phillip movie is incredibly crude and vulgar, and the boys intake it all with wonder. A funny detail here is that this scene is actually a self-referential parody of how parents and critics at the time saw South Park, a poorly drawn, crude, offensive mess. Later on, when the kids get in trouble for cursing, they try to play it off of having heard the words from their teacher, Mr. Garrison, which, if you have seen the show or seen clips, you know that Mr. Garrison is very foul-mouthed, and that is not a stretch of the imagination to think that he would definitely drop a lot of the words that they were saying in front of him. And he also had just used the R slur previously in this scene, and while this was 1999, it still wasn't quite considered offensive. It was still kind of naughty and not used. But after being pressured, Eric comes clean about the movie and plays into the parents' desire to blame it on the Terrence and Phillip film. Once again, showing us that lack of accountability and negligence that we were talking about before. Some of you may see the word negligence as a stretch here, but these parents are letting their 9-year-olds walk around the town unsupervised and are then surprised and shocked when they're engaging things that are far past their maturity level. Something else notable here is that the boys aren't given punishments because they saw the movie. They're just busy blaming the movie that they saw rather than the boys sneaking out and having homeless guy get the tickets for them. It's not actually until after the second time the parents find out that they've seen the movie that they decide to ground the boys. After their second trip to the movies, Cartman dares Kenny to light a fart on fire, and Kenny obliges and sets the fart on fire, which also ultimately sets him on fire. Between his sustained injuries and negligence, again, from the doctors replacing his heart with a potato by mistake, Kenny dies. Outraged at Kenny's death, Sheila, along with the other parents hold a PTA meeting, all angry and upset about the fact that the Canadians are the ones that are ruining them and forcing them to say curse words and use naughty language and set themselves on fire. During this meeting, Sheila goes on yet another xenophobic and honestly slightly in-universe racist rant against Terrence and Phillip. But not only just Terrence and Phillip, but all of Canada. Blaming Canada for the reason why Kenny was dead and why the children were all saying curse words. Once again, not recognizing that was in fact their negligence that ended up with the kids seeing the Terrence and Phillip movie to begin with. Sheila is the figurehead of this movement, continuously calling the shots. Throughout the musical sequence, she leads the parents from the PTA meeting to form MAC, or Mothers Against Canada. This is another jab at the parents that were signing petitions and forming groups that were trying to boycott South Park, even though, I don't know, man, just put on TV controls, put a code on it. Topics like this are still prevalent to this day, but the response is still the same. Take accountability for your children and what they watch. Or, of course, we could always just blame Canada! Blame Canada! Soon after the song, during an interview with Terrence and Phillip on Conan, the members of MAC, headed by Sheila and a violent militia that also has joined them, illegally detain, also, in other words, kidnap Terrence and Phillip on live television. Then this kind of sets off the Canadian government to... I have my notes here. Bomb the Baldwins?
You missed me!
I mean, okay. Bomb the Baldwins, I guess. Bomb the Baldwins, I guess. Bomb them. This leads Sheila to strong-arming her way into becoming the Secretary of Defense and declaring war on Canada. This really is feeling too familiar, honestly. And I know Matt and Trey back then were probably just writing stuff they thought was like the most bizarre thing. After war is declared, the kids are distraught and want the war to stop. After some good old-fashioned America propaganda is spread, the kids are forced to discard all of their Terrence and Phillip merch, as well as any Canadian-related merch, into a burning pit. Sheila, along with the other boys' mothers, are gathered at a podium and are yelling about the execution that they are going to do on Terrence and Phillip. Stan pleads with Kyle to tell his mother that she needs to stop and put an end to all of this madness. After war is declared, the kids are distraught and want the war to stop. After some good old-fashioned America propaganda is spread, the kids are forced to discard all of their Terrence and Phillip merch, as well as any Canadian-related or affiliated merch, into a large burning pile. Yet another reference to a certain tragic time in history. Sheila, along with the other boys' mothers, are gathered at a podium shouting that they are going to execute Terrence and Phillip. Stan pleads for Kyle to stand up against his mother, but the moment Sheila turns her attention to him, he shuts down, unable to tell his mother that she needs to put an end to all this madness. Stan does try to convince Sheila, however, this does not go over well, and she simply just shouts over him and continues to badger on and on and on. After this, the kids walk away, they're distraught, and Stan decides that to impress his adolescent little crush on Wendy, he is going to start a resistance, because it is something that Brian, Boy, Tino do, and all of the boys jump into song all about the Olympic skater and all the things he'd do, reminding the viewers that we are watching fourth graders going through this funny, crazy little situation. Kyle sings about wanting to be able to stand up and fight against his mom and tell his mom to stop fighting against Canada and to just stop the fighting and the war in general, which is really his main one in this entire movie. But because Sheila is so quick to anger, fear things that she doesn't know or understand, and constantly talks over her son, it leads him to joining the resistance in hope of saving Terrence and Philip. And because Sheila is so concerned about executing Terrence and Philip and going to war with Canada, she completely neglects not only Kyle, but her baby adopted Canadian child at home, Ike, and leaves them completely without any supervision. But instead of any self-reflection or taking a moment to pause and maybe think, maybe it isn't the media that's ruining my kids, she keeps blaming Canada. Kyle hacks his dad's computer to send out an email to all the kids in their grade. This is where we get the Renaissance group name, La Resistance, because of course it is. The instructions are to sneak out after they have all been tucked in. We cut back to Stan and Kyle prepping the warehouse for the Resistance group meetup. Cartman, he bursts in and tells them about Satan and Saddam's plan to take over the world. Soon, Stan's rival and Wendy show up for the meeting, along with all the other kids in their grade. The rival assigns himself to sneak out, but Stan says that he and the boys are going to sneak Terrence and Philip out and will meet the rest of them there. They are told to go meet the mole, who is an expert in this sort of thing, the next day, and get him to assist in the mission. Before Kyle joins the boys to get the mole, he hides his adopted baby brother, Ike, in the attic. As American troops march down the street, Kyle promises that he is going to stop his mom from killing Terrence and Philip and putting an end to the war. The next scene is the boys going to the mole's house, who also turns out to be a kid like them. And actually turns out he is also grounded, just like all of them. He is allowed to talk to them for a moment, and they ask him to join the revolution. It takes a little bit of convincing, but he quickly agrees. Later that night, at the USO show, the show hosting the execution of Terrence and Philip, the boys, along with the mole, sneak into the Canadian concentration camps. We get to Sheila, along with Big Gay Al, hosting the USO, opening the stadium full of military personnel, as Sheila raves about how they are going to abolish Canadian smut. They have Terrence and Philip wheeled out onto stage, strapped to electrocution chairs. Sheila, along with the other parents, fervently strap them and secure them further into the chairs, while Big Gay Al continues on with the show. At this point, Sheila has fully lost it. Her anger over Terrence and Philip and subsequently Canada have brought them to a military show, with the main event being an execution of 2 comedians. Of course, there are other acts before the main event, giving the kids enough chance to sneak in and try to help Terrence and Philip escape. We then cut back to Sheila, ranting on stage again, going on a completely xenophobic rant to the military army about their fight against Canadians. From mom heading the PTA to a radical terrorist, Sheila, mainly Matt and Trey, make another reference to MPAA's deplorable violence is okay as long as people don't say any naughty words.
Horrific, deplorable violence is okay as long as people don't say any naughty words.
Saying that this was truly what the war was about. The boys and the mole split up to help with diversions. Cartman was in charge of turning off the alarm, the mole getting Terrence and Philip, and Stan and Kyle to stall the execution. This fails as Kenny's ghost spooks Cartman when he tells him that Saddam and Satan are preparing and ready to come to Earth. So the mole is caught and soon after dies. R.I.P. to the real ones, I guess. The execution goes on, but the boys confront Sheila. But once again, before anything can happen, Kyle chickens out and does not talk back and stand up to his mother. Stan instead tells Sheila about Satan and Saddam, and they are all laughed at and ignored by every single member of MAC and the military soldiers. Once again, we see that these adults continuously ignore the kids when they try to tell the truth. So they electrocute Terrence and Philip, but suddenly the Canadians attack, bombing the stadium, giving the kids time to rush in and turn off the power, freeing the Canadian fart stars. They all run into the chaos of the ensuing battlefield. Sheila, as well as the rest of the MAC members, watches the ongoing war. The other members of MAC all begin to realize that they were wrong, and that this is going to end up hurting their kids rather than actually saving them. Sheila continues to resist this, not allowing to see past her own anger. We then cut to Terrence and Philip being cornered by the American government. But then, resistance shows up. Sheila yells at the kids to go home and leave, but Kyle finally stands up against his mother, walking over and standing in front of Terrence and Philip. This action leads the other kids to stand up in front of the two others in order to protect the comedians. After Stan also stands up, which this is still not really about him, he doesn't have a great plot in this entire movie. It is really nonsensical. Kyle then reveals that Sheila actually has an adopted son who is Canadian himself that's hiding in their attic at home. Sheila continues to shirk the blame, and Kyle asks his mom to actually confront him when he does things wrong and when he messes up, that he doesn't want his mom to keep doing this, that he wants his mom. Sheila flips out and kills Terrence and Philip. Unwilling to face her past mistakes and take responsibility, she starts the end of the world. An epic battle sequence commences, and Saddam is defeated. Satan takes him and finishes him off, ending him once and for all. With his one and only wish, the ever so selfless Kenny asks for everything to go back the way it was before the war. Satan leaves back to hell, and Kenny evaporates. Everything returns back to normal, and Sheila finally apologizes for all that she's done wrong. I have always loved Matt and Trey's writing, and to this day, I still do, and I'm sure that whenever more episodes release, there'll be plenty more to come. But while I like to wait for that, I also love to go back and watch the good old classic South Park, and this movie is just the perfect mix of classic, offensive, but classic South Park. And Axel is like a little tiny time capsule for kind of how people were feeling back then. Matt and Trey aren't like voices of the world, but like I know dudes who probably would have thought exactly like them, so I know what those specific dudes were like back in 1999. Thank you guys so much for watching, listening to me ramble about this. I love to talk about South Park, so if you like to hear more from me and more about content like this or talk about media like this, I would love to. Have a great day.